Okay, let's talk about the intermediate program. Now, if you're thinking there's going to be a whole lot more exercises and just lifting heavier weights, not quite that. Listen, with the intermediate, it's more of a mindset and the approach to the workout. So yes, you need to be pushing the weights, especially if your goal is hypertrophy, you're looking at growing the muscle, getting it stronger and bigger. You need to be lifting the heavier weights, but it's not just about the weights. Variation, angles, and making sure that we're working the right muscles, the right proportion, getting the right detail and conditioning. So much of the beginner and the intermediate program is kind of the foundation. We're gonna start on the machine curl. Tons of different variations that we can add in with the intermediate. I wanna use some machines because there's a real key to the isolation, especially when going heavy. So of course you've got the barbell, you've got the dumbbells with the beginners. Start on them, add one or two of them into alternate workouts, but definitely include some machines as you start to progress up over the following months. And what we're doing on this arm curl machine is we're gonna introduce a shocking principle in. I call this rest pause. This is great if you're training alone. Okay, now I'm gonna rest for no more than 20 seconds. I'm just gonna control my breathing. I'm not gonna change the weight. Could have got maybe one or two more reps, but I felt like my form was just at its upper limit there. I was starting to break away from that. So even though you might be able to lift more weight, get to the heaviest that you can lift without you feeling that your form is starting to break down. Give yourself a little rest, and then get back in. 3, 4 more reps. You're gonna feel it so much more. Okay, one other thing I want to introduce into sort of the intermediate type of training, and that is this isometric tension. What I mean by that is after you finished your working set, even with things like the barbell, the dumbbell curls, especially machines, once you finished that final rep, squeeze that muscle. You know, it could be legs, chest, arms, shoulders. Hold a pose where you can feel maximum contraction and just hold that squeeze for about 10 seconds. As far as conditioning, getting the muscle separation, getting those fibers, that detail out, this is what I find really works well for me. This is where you start to really feel the effects as well in the following days. That DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. It's things like this that are really gonna let you know that you push your muscle to its limit. And it's that limit and the adaptation, overcoming of those stresses, the body being able to rest, recover, and come back just that little bit more better, well equipped to be able to manage that stress. You can start to see how we build up. So 3 to 4 sets on here, warm up, go heavy. Once you've done that rest pause, throw in a drop set, a strip set, a superset, something else that keeps that intensity up there without always needing to be pushing up those weights. All right, let's go have a look at the second exercise in our intermediate warm-up. All right, so the next exercise we're looking at are hammer curls. Now, if you haven't done a hammer curl, it's basically a dumbbell curl, but we're gonna keep the thumb up at the top, which works the muscle slightly differently than if we had that rotation in. Just being aware of all of these different techniques and methods and principles and how and when best to use them. So what we're doing with the hammer curl, we're gonna keep it all the way up towards our shoulders and a full lengthening of the bicep at the bottom, like this. Really gets a lot of blood into the muscle performing it like this. But like I said, variations. So a couple of different things that we can do here. Of course, you can perform these hammer curls standing. You can also perform them cross body, one arm at a time, towards the opposite shoulder. Very different feeling in the muscle here. And of course, it looks great. But what I'm talking about with this variation, we call this one 21s. We're gonna break it down into kind of 3 sevens. What I mean by that is typically we focus on the lower half, the upper half, and then a full repetition there. You can perform this in any number of different ways like that. You can do upper, full, and lower. Really challenging, and even though it works the full muscle as a whole, you do tend to feel it in slightly different areas as you're performing that trio with this 21s. 7, going to that isometric tension. All the muscle fibers now are kind of doing this with my arm, that's why I know I've pushed it to its limit. Arms are feeling, I'm super pumped right now. So this technique doesn't have to be just kept to that intermediate or advanced. If you feel comfortable with those beginner exercises, start to play around, add some variation and shocking principles and different training methods in. This is really pushing me. Let's move on, finish the last of our intermediate exercises. I got a little superset combo for you. We'll take a look at some of the more advanced exercises that I'll do, especially for detail and conditioning, which I might use in the run-up for a photo shoot or competition. Let's take a look. All right then, now we are looking at one of my favorite bicep exercises. This, I like to call it a high cable curl. Probably see me on videos or many other people do this. It's a great finisher for an exercise, also a great warm-up for many of the arm workouts. First thing we need to do is adjust the pulleys to about shoulder height. If they're too high, that line of pull where it's pulling on the bicep is going to be too high. So we want to get it as kind of parallel to the floor as possible. So if you hold the arm out, up, this is where the cable needs to be. So about head height. So I'm going to keep the weight moderate, not too light, but not too heavy, and focus more on some volume and some supersets as well, which we'll do after this. We're going to look up, making sure that we're perfectly centered. Step forwards, one leg back as a kickstand. One more thing, if the cable pulleys don't get full extension, you can do one arm at a time or step forwards just a bit. Okay, fresh off the high cable curls, I'm gonna dive straight into a close grip easy bar curl. So you can do it with the straight bar too, a little bit more comfortable on the wrists. As you can see, not a whole lot of weight, but I'm already pumped and feeling fatigued. So elbows out, nice tight close grip. That feels great. So I mentioned at the beginning, this intermediate workout is more about creating shape and detail in the muscle. Beginner and to a degree the intermediate, go heavy, progress, the muscles are going to get bigger. But it's not just size, certainly for me. It's about detail. So it's about the short head, the long head, the peak, making sure I've got a nice split and separation. So you really need to ask yourself, what's the purpose of training? If you want to look great, stand on stage, do photos, or just feel good about yourself, this kind of training is going to be right up your alley. If you're looking for something more functional based on your sport, mix some of this and blend it in with your type of functional training. Therefore, you've got the aesthetics and the function. Man, that routine really pushed me. Okay, with that being said, let's move on, have a look at more of the advanced exercises. And as I mentioned before, not that these exercises are that much more challenging, but they're more focused on detail and conditioning, getting you really ready for the stage or for the camera. First, I need some BCAAs. I've got to keep that recovery up.